So, Dr. Christian Toma, founder and chief science officer at Kalera, thank you for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Where's home for you?
Orlando, Florida.
Oh, how long have you been there?
Well, since 2007.
Okay.
A brief break from the great Florida weather when I went to the Silicon Valley to San Jose.
Okay.
During for a few years, but then came back to Orlando when we founded this company that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay. And where did you where'd you go to university? Where did you do your studies?
Originally, I'm from Romania.
Okay.
So I studied there in the Netherlands. Then I came over to the US in '94 for my postdoc at the University of Colorado.
Okay.
Then after that, I went into the industry. I worked prior to founding Kalera. I worked mostly in the semiconductor and biomedical industries. Both with large companies like Becton Dickinson in the Silicon Valley, but also with a few startups. But I was always, especially after 2000, I was looking for opportunities in the emerging green economy, and this opportunity came when the other co-founder of the company, who unfortunately passed away 5 years ago, landed an engineering project to help redesign the master plan of a green city. Actually, to turn a city plan into a green city in the style of Masdar City in Abu Dhabi. It was a larger team. Our small team worked on some specific aspects of a green city, one of them being local food production. And that was 2009, 2010, and this is when we were asked by the project owners to do an analysis of a vertical farm. So we did the unit economics analysis. Back then, the unit economics was not there yet, especially because of the status of the lighting technology. But we saw the LED modules, that the LED technology that was advancing really fast, and we saw that maybe in a couple of years they're going to be there, and this is when we decided to form a company. That was 2010. So after we founded the company, we kept at working on the concept and started working on technical details, and we really accelerated the development in 2013 when we found our first group of investors. Out of all places, they came from Norway. So that explains why for a while we were owned by a Norwegian holding, and actually we went public first in Norway on the Oslo Exchange a couple of years ago, before moving to NASDAQ recently in June of this year. So we initially we started with small installations. Our first focus were on the hospitality industry. And
so that's when you worked at when you created the HyCube with working
exactly. So the HyCube is a 2,000 square foot growing facility on the premises of the Orlando World Center Marriott, which is actually the largest hotel under the Marriott flag. So it's a 2,000 square foot grow room, which has a glass facade, very visible, high PR and high educational value, high marketing value for the hotel as well. So it's literally pick to plate. So the farm is 20 feet away from their culinary operations. You cannot get closer than that unless you have a vegetable patch behind your home. So we're opened it officially in April of 2018. It's still operating, still providing fresh lettuces and herbs and microgreens to the hotel, and that facility really put us on the map. We ended up in the 2018 sustainability report for Marriott International. So we had a few other HyCube-like project opportunities with some high-end hotels around the country. But operating that facility for a year, we realized that it's very difficult to scale up a vertical farming business the way our investors wanted, with small installations like this. So in 2019, we decided to pivot to larger farms, quote-unquote plant factories, and we opened our first one also in Orlando, built in a standard warehouse. It's a 33,000 square foot farm, out of which 20,000 is a grow room, we had the first harvest in March of 2020. The initial focus for the farm was food services in the Orlando area, so it was designed for that, with that in mind. Unfortunately, first harvest coincided with the COVID hitting really hard in this country. So for a while, the food services business went away. Orlando being the largest tourist destination in the U.S., 70, 80 million tourists per year. The city was hit really hard, especially the business groups, the conventions went away. So we had to pivot really quickly to retail, and we're very fortunate to get Publix, which is the major grocery retailer here in Florida, as a customer pretty quick. And so we had to rearrange everything, on the post-harvest side to fit the requirements of retail packaging line. And now Publix is still our largest customer in the retail space. But that was quite a story to tell grandkids. We had our first delivery to Publix. It was Friday night in April 2020, just the Friday night before Easter. Everybody was there, from top to bottom of the organization, packing and labeling and making sure that that first shipment goes out. And we had a deadline for Saturday morning at 5 a.m.
How big was the shipment?
Well, it was a truck load, a full truck of boxes, and so that's 26 pallets. Yeah. And we made it at 3 a.m. We're ready, and at 5 a.m., a few minutes before 5, the truck went out. And in this area, the Publix distribution center is very close by, and actually that's the whole idea with vertical farming. It makes a lot of sense to do it when you can locate your farms very close to your customers. Of course. And distribution centers for major customers. And so then we started expanding. The next farm was Atlanta, twice the size of Orlando, 75,000 square feet in the outskirts of Atlanta. And that started operating early 2021, followed by Houston, which is larger, 88,000 square feet, because everything is larger in Texas, a large population area. So, and then followed by Denver. So Houston started operating in September, October of 2021. Then Denver, we had a big opening in April of this year. Our approach was to try to expand as much as possible. So we try to create a national footprint. So we can talk to larger food services and companies and larger grocery chain companies that are looking for that partner that can supply at a national level, and this was, in a way, the strategy was educated with a partnership that we signed with U.S. Foods this year.
Yes,
US Foods, I think, is the third largest food services company in the U.S. Very innovative, great partnership. They really have a long-term view, and they understand very well the challenges of today's today's challenges with the food distribution systems, especially for fresh produce. And, fantastic partner to have. Yeah.
So that's a fantastic recap of your journey with the company. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, just rewinding the clock back a little bit. You got your start in engineering, and I'm wondering if that's always been a passion for you. Like, do you remember even going far back to growing up as a child? If this is something that was a passion for you, just this idea of engineering or learning how things work and fixing problems.
Yes, and so I was always on that track, math and physics, and so I studied. My studies are in digital signal processing and image processing and electronics. That's something that 30 years ago I have sounded kind of strange, but
future
today is precision agriculture is all about collecting data, putting data in context, and that context coming from plant science, and then today you can think of precision agriculture without machine learning, computer vision, big data, analytics. So that background came in very handy. Also, in a way, I'm following on my father's
footsteps.
He was an agronomist in your country, and he used to say, don't be an agronomist. You're gonna end up spending half of your life in the field, dusty and thirsty, and go be an engineer. So I became an engineer, but 30 years later, what do? I grow lettuce. He'll probably not recognize now, many of the systems that and the methods that we're using, but ultimately, the plant science is almost the same.
Do you remember when, as you were studying and learning about engineering, when you started to become interested also in plant scientists, or because of like your family history with agronomy, that this was something that was always in the back of your mind?
Well, I remember that one of the first projects that I worked on as a young graduate was to analyze satellite images to do automated land use classification. Back then, that was it kind of dates me. It's mid-80s. We're using Landsat images. One image, we used to call them scenes. This is how, the trade name for that is maybe 7 spectral bands, 4,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels. We had to pay $5,000 for one image like that, multispectral image. I mean, these days you have drone services that can map your fields at an accuracy, actually at a resolution that is much higher than what you could get with a Landsat image, and that's a service that you pay monthly, and you get the images with all the stress spots marked. It's just amazing how imaging and evolve to the point where these services can be offered in a very affordable way to farmers. And then there are working in biomedical imaging. So I had the chance to work at Becton Dickinson in San Jose with a very talented team of biophysicists and biochemists, looking at classifying cells and doing this at very high speed and high accuracy. So that was quite an interesting experience to see how we can use algorithms and computer vision to look at biological processes.
So if you think back to, let's say, probably 2010, 11, 12, as you're starting to come up with the idea and you're having conversations with your co-founder, can you put yourself in that mindset? Like, what was the idea? What were you seeing? What was the inspiration? Because working in a company is, as you know now, is very different than starting your own, and you started out as a CEO as well. So I'm wondering what that thought process was like for you in those early days, just as you were thinking about starting Kalera.
Yeah, I mean, I was always very interested in healthy food and nutritive values, and how to improve the daily nutritional intake. Starting with my own family, and then realizing that there is a real need, and then for that, and then talking to to head chefs from all these high-end hotels, we realized that there's so much desire to improve the quality of the of their offerings, and many times they're limited by the quality of the produce that they were getting through the regular channels. And so we kind of followed the guidance early on, the guidance of these chefs, and I have very high regard for talented chefs, because I think it's an art that combines both the culinary art, but also the art of running a business.
Yeah.
So we follow their lead, actually, and so our first installation was actually a very small scale, we call it cube, that was built inside a warehouse where we experimented with our growing methods, and we also used it as a showcase to for chefs. And initially they were a bit reluctant. Back then people still thought that hydroponics, maybe these products don't taste as good as field-grown products. But so we just brought them in and said, here, taste. This is lettuce. This is basil. This is please go ahead. And we're just standing there, watching them, how they were, initially they were a bit reluctant, but then they realized, oh, this is so intense. So please, I want to have this cilantro in my kitchen. So we
were you surprised, or was that something that was, because you had obviously you knew what you were creating, you knew the difference in the taste and the freshness. But obviously there's nothing like hearing it directly from the chefs who were standing in front of you.
I was not surprised, because we knew the quality of the product. So we're elated, and they became our biggest champions. That's the case with this Marriott Orlando World Center. The initiative was started from the head chef and the director of food and beverage services, who then took it up the organization, and we ended up building this HyCube. But always, I mean, we tried always to go directly to the people who actually can discern the quality, and then get them to use our product.
Where did you
So
look in those early days as one of the most important things at that stage is ensuring that you're building the right team, right? And so
mhm.
you have to have people that you trust, but people that can also do the work and that are just as passionate about this project as you.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
what was that like in those early days to figure out who was going to be the right people to move this idea forward?
Yeah, I found that in my life that you don't really know somebody unless you work with them for at
Yeah,
least 3 months. But
yeah,
I would say that the two most important hires that we made early on were the two master growers that we hired, super talented, both with plant science degrees, young and energetic. They both went through the hydroponic internship at Disney
okay.
Epcot Center. So that's a fantastic program.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's a 6 months program, and they get exposed to many hydroponic systems and
okay.
to the discipline and rigor of a commercial farm. So that I think that no matter how much technology you use, if you don't have talented growers, yeah, the quality suffers.
Yeah.
This is why we usually like to say, well, we're farmers that use technology
Mm-hmm.
rather than technologies that happen to farm. And I definitely believe that there are, and you can see, when we bring in new hires, new candidates, you kind of see maybe in 2 weeks, you see who's a talented grower and who actually belongs maybe somewhere else in the organization.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, these two gentlemen are still with us, and now one of them is director of R&D
Mm.
for US, and the other one is director of food safety and actually plant production for all the
Mm.
US farms. So um, also, yeah, so that's a key for any vertical farm. I think that's a key set of skills that we have to attract.
Yeah.
I have
Do
to
you do
say
you
that.
find that nowadays? I see on the website you're up to 360 employees, and so obviously the challenges are different now. But
Yeah.
how did you grow, or how did you change, or what skills did you have to acquire as a leader in those early days? Because prior to that, you were working as part of a team and for someone. And I'm curious
Well,
about what your journey has been like personally in terms of your development.
well, personally, yeah. So leadership is a people business, right? So, so, yes, it was also a personal journey from for me personally, from going to being focused on technology management, technology development, to working with people. Learned a lot from them, and I hope that they learn from me as well. But yeah, it's a transition. So I would say, being very crisp and focused on your message, so you don't put out confusion out there to the organization is super important. Um, yeah, so people in an organization, I found that they need a clear direction, a clear
Yeah.
message, and then um, reinforce it over and over. That's Yeah, I think that was one of the best lessons learned for me personally. At one point, when we started building all these large farms, the yeah, so I don't have a background in the food industry.
Hmm.
So at one point, when we became, we turned the corner from a development company to a commercial oriented company. The whole management team had to be, reorganized, and we needed to bring in actually new management that comes from that industry, because at one point you have to change from development to more towards more of a process oriented company,
Yeah.
especially in consumer packaged goods. So this is when we hired our first chief operating officer, Austin Martin, who is now the president for U.S. operations, who comes from many years of experience in the food industry and at all levels and at all aspects. And then so we saw this in our farms. At one point, you have to be focused on processes so you can get that, reduce the variability of your output, get your yields week after week after week, throughput yields to be consistently high. It requires technology, but it also requires discipline and execution at the farm level. So that's one big shift that we had to do, 2 years ago when we started expanding with large farms around the country.
Were there relationships that you nurtured over the course of your career, mentors that were helpful for you as you were starting to grow and develop in your role?
Yeah, it's I found good advice from some of our early investors who were very forward-looking. Like people from LGT. This is a Liechtenstein. So it's sorry, I have to.
Yeah, no
to
worries.
think a little bit. Maybe I have to retake this.
Yeah, well, you can retake it.
Yeah. So, what is LGT? Sorry.
You can look it up if you want.
Yeah.
And this is for our production team, Levi. We can patch this together.
I'm sorry.
All good. No worries. It's better to get the right name.
Yeah, especially when it's. Looking at their website, they're all LGT. Well, let's call them LGT.
Okay.
Okay. So again, you want to ask that question again?
Yeah. So as you were growing in your career and in your leadership, were there relationships that you nurtured that were important for you, or mentors that were helpful for you along the way?
Well, I got a lot of good advice from some of our early investors who are still with us. For example, LGT, impact investor, sustainability-oriented investor who has a long-term view. Just great advice on focusing on the essentials. Trying not to spend too much time in the weeds. At this level of leadership, to make sure that fundamentals are good and the direction is good, and just selecting your challenges and addressing the important issues first, and keeping an eye on the long term rather than getting drowned in the noise.
Yeah.
So in terms of people, handling people, great advice from my other co-founder, Mr. Christian Avanescu, who unfortunately passed away 5 years ago. He always had put a lot of trust in people, especially after they proved themselves to be trustworthy in the organization. So this would be at the top of my list.
Very helpful. One of the things that was that made news obviously was the decision to go public on Nasdaq, and I'm wondering, as a team, as you started to think about that decision and the factors that led up to that, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what was happening leading up to making that decision as a management team.
Well, it was in a way a natural step for us because we're in this structure where basically we were a US based company, but with a under a Norwegian holding with all the investor base and being listed in Norway. So it was a little bit it was not a natural structure given where the most of our operations were. So it was at one point a natural progression. We have to come into the to move our listing to the US because this is where we belong. Most of our operations belong here, and plus we needed to extend our investor base as well, and we need to be able to talk to investors that are focused on the US market. So that was the main reason.
Yeah, and so as part of as you think about structuring the company and adding the board of directors and other people who can advise you from different industries, how have you found that to be helpful in terms of decision or strategy in terms of thinking about where the company is going to be going for, especially in this environment? It's been competitive, so many companies entering this space as well.
Well, we're very fortunate to have some very experienced people on the board. So, as we moved to the U.S. To Nasdaq, we have a board that's structured according to the requirements specific to a U.S. listed company. So we have to have the governance structure that is required with the governance committee, the audit committee, and you have to have people that are experienced leading those committees. And for a while we had Kim Lobdrup, who was the CEO of Red Lobster, as the chairman, and he was a well-known professional in the industry, so he was able to open some doors for us and attract other very experienced people to join our board. So it was it's something that we built over a year in terms of searching the board, and so these are individuals that have experience with for many years with other public boards, so they were helping us tremendously to make sure that our governance approach is sound and everything is in order to meet the SEC requirements.
What's been your perspective as you've seen the industry mature? Because you were obviously early and you had a lot of opportunity to do some early innovation in the space. But it's been, I've been hosting this show for 2 years, and it's been interesting to see how much growth there's been happening in just that short period of time. And obviously you've seen just as much, if not more. And I'm wondering what your take is on how the industry is maturing.
Well, I mean, I think that, there is a lot of money that went into the industry. I think that as an industry, we got to a point where we really have to prove our unit economics. And being a public company, obviously we have reporting requirements, so we have to disclose a lot of aspects of our performance. But as an industry, we really have to prove the potential that we have, not only from the point of view of improving the food system, but also the economic performance. So So this is what I think everybody should focus, including Kalera, to perfect our operations, increase our sales performance such that we can prove to our investors and to the rest of the markets that yes, this is a viable industry. It's from our perspective, it's we still think it's a viable industry, but we really need to focus on these aspects.
How has your day-to-day responsibilities changed? Because you started in the CEO role and now you're Chief Science Officer. And so what are the things that you're thinking about now in that role that are different? And where do you find more of your focus going now?
Well, so as a Chief Science Officer, I'm more focused versus previously on longer-term projects. So I'm working on some projects that have the potential to provide some technological breakthroughs with respect to energy efficiency, and the ability to control better the growing process, involving things like novel sensors and robotics and machine learning. I really think that it's very important. Genetics is very important. As you know, last year we acquired a seed development company called Vindara, which is a startup coming out of the technology triangle in North Carolina. Vindara is developing new plant varieties using machine learning. So they're developing a database of a genomic and phenotype database that allows the system to accelerate the breeding process for a leafy green variety, going down from 5 to 7 years to 12 to 18 months, only through analytics, no genetic engineering. So this is done by providing or allowing a more targeted breeding process towards a set of traits that you are targeting for the final product, and this is done strictly through analytics. So seed is probably one of the most important inputs in the process, and so you see that other companies are focused on this aspect as well. But we believe that with Vindara having this capability in house, it's very important. So we're looking at new varieties bred for yield, but also for nutritive value. Good things like antioxidants, for example. Increasing the nutritive content of plants in general. So that's something that I'm very interested in. Then there is also the continuous crop improvement program that requires data collection and analysis, and how do you automate that to improve the speed of validation of yields and
Are you seeing or noticing the availability of talent for these types of roles? Because it seems like with what you described with the acquisition of Vindara, that there's this. They obviously had discovered that there was a need for this type of AI-driven plant breeding, and which obviously you found value in as well. And I'm wondering if this is opening up opportunities for just a more interest in this type of science because of the need, for companies like Kalera that need people that understand this and are able to take advantage of these technologies.
definitely. I mean, bioinformatics is a hot topic, and there are some great programs out there, college programs. So I also happen to sit on the advisory board for the Agricultural and Biological Engineering Department at the University of Florida, Gainesville.
Okay.
So this is where engineering meets plant science,
Yeah.
and it's they have wonderful programs and research programs and teaching programs oriented towards machine learning, modeling, um, and so these skills are in high demand. You go to any AB department, agricultural and biological engineering department, you will see a lot of focus on machine learning these days. University of Florida, I think, is investing $200 million in AI across different colleges and departments, and some of this money is going to the agricultural department. So you can see that we see college graduates coming out who are very qualified.
Yeah.
And plus we do indoor agriculture, so they don't need to spend too much time in the field, dusty and thirsty.
like in the old days.
Yeah.
You're also expanding your international footprint. Why was that important for you?
Well, there are certain regions that are very attractive for this industry. Middle East, given the climate, Southeast Asia, huge market, expanding market with tremendous expansion of the middle class there. Last year we acquired this German company called Endeavor, and now it's Kalera. Their geographical expansion was one of the reasons. When we acquired them, they already had a farm operating in Kuwait,
okay,
and in the middle of a desert, literally, and a farm in construction in Singapore. In Singapore, we're also setting up our global R&D center. We have very good relationships with the Singaporean government. Actually, that farm was also possible because of a grant that was it was a competitive grant process that was awarded to Endeavor.
okay,
It was something like 3 million Singaporean dollars being awarded towards the building of that farm. So Singapore is it's becoming known as the Food Valley, Silicon Valley, Food Valley.
yeah,
Given their challenges in being a net importer for 90% of their food needs.
wow,
At the government level, they have a lot of programs to bring some of that supply on the island. You probably are aware that they're becoming a leader in plant-based and culture-based meat,
yeah,
which is great for for the planet because of the carbon dioxide footprint of fresh meat, which is very, very, very high.
yeah,
And tremendous technology talent and a lot of programs at the government level that are focused on sustainable food production. We're very happy that we're there. And the other reason for acquiring Endeavor was diversification of our product portfolio, which our first farms in the U.S. were centered mostly on whole head production and microgreens. The Endeavor team brought in the capabilities and knowledge of highly automated baby leaf production,
Okay.
So together, we pretty much can cover the entire range of products in our leafy green product portfolio, from microgreens to full heads.
Sounds like it's a very targeted acquisition that made
Mm.
sense and completed, sort of rounded out your portfolio of
Yeah.
products you can offer. What I like to ask this question just to kind of think about what's on your mind lately. What's a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently?
Ah. um, well, what's next, right, for
Mm,
vertical farming?
yeah.
So um, it's is it um, maybe you see this in quite a lot in the industry. Some people are trying out crops that maybe don't belong in vertical farms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the questions that we're asked a lot also by investors. Okay, leafy greens, you know how to do that. It's what's next. So
Yeah.
some people are looking at fruiting products, tomatoes, and strawberries. Strawberries seems to be the holy grail these days. So yeah, we have an internal debate, and actually, obviously, we have our own projects in this area. So the question is, is it really, does it make sense at large scale? Does it make sense to grow a product that is, energy hungry even more than leafy greens?
Mm,
So we'll see. I mean, a lot is changing based on, climate and geopolitical, situations. Who knows? Um, so personally, I think that what's next is, and actually already, doing it, having a very clear focus on nutritive value. It's not enough to produce, pounds and pounds, millions of pounds of product, but that product it has to have a nutritive value.
yeah.
So I think that there is a lot of room there for vertical farming, because we can control all the conditions, and once you add the optimized genetics for our conditions, then you can really think about superfoods and super crops. How do you create an arugula that gives you, let's say, all the vitamin C that you need for one day in just one bowl
Yeah.
of product. So that's a good utilization of resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my opinion.
What are some of
So
the projects you're looking to get accomplished over the next 5 to 10 years at Kalera?
oh, it's a long a long view. So yeah, obviously we have announced our plans to expand in the U.S. We want to yeah to cover all the major regions in the U.S. We already announced St. Paul and Seattle, and um, expand in Asia, in the Middle East, which are very important regions for us. I mean, for me personally, again, I'm very interested in how far we can take this, automated control, um, uh, of processes in a vertical farm. Um, how do we not eliminate the expert, but how do we empower the expert with data-driven tools
Mm-hmm.
to help them make decisions? So these are all, very interesting projects that I think will take several years to to get them to fruition. Energy efficiency is so important in our
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, we very interested in innovations along that line.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are interested in, obviously carbon neutrality and, biodegradable grow media, and I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the space. Obviously, one of the things people talk about a lot is, just minimizing waste, right? Unnecessary packaging and, you know, water reuse. I think there's so many interesting things that are happening in the space as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the substrate. Yeah, so these days, probably the most productive substrate is still the one that's peat based.
Yeah.
But peat is not the most sustainable input. And actually, in Europe, there is a directive to phase out peat-based products by 2030. So it's obviously we have projects looking at alternatives with some technology partners. But that's a very interesting project and program. That's reducing. Yeah, it has to do with improving the footprint of your inputs in the process. So it's very important.
Yeah, it sounds like you're not going to be struggling to find things that are going to be keeping you busy.
No, I wake up every morning very excited about the day ahead. It's,
what keeps you motivated?
Well, I mean, first of all, seeing that the consumers love our product.
Yeah.
Sometimes I walk around with my Kalera shirt and I get stopped, at the grocery store or at the gym and whatnot. And say, "Oh, Kalera, I like your products." Great.
That's always a good feeling.
So that's a huge satisfaction. I'm really motivated by how good our young growers are. Very passionate. They're really good. I absolutely love them, and they give me a lot of energy. Without them, I don't think we can operate the farms to the level that we want.
I'm always interested in people's development over the years. So I'm wondering if there's something you've changed your mind about recently.
Something that changed my mind about. Well, I mean, at one point I thought that maybe vertical farming can solve all the issues in the world, but no.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to understand that we have a place in the food system and be, I don't want to say humble, but be, not chase, projects that are too unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because many of these projects end up using more resources than creating more problems that we want to solve.
Yeah.
But just continuing to innovate and expand our footprint in the food industry, but doing it in a way that it makes sense and it doesn't use more resources than other than existing approaches, more traditional approaches. So that's. I think I changed my mind with regards to the best retirement age. I don't see myself retiring ever because things are so.
Still exciting.
Every day there is new stuff coming out that is very exciting and keeps me motivated.
What this podcast is listened to by a lot of like your peers in the space, your colleagues, other CEOs as well. So, just wanted to give you the opportunity. Is there a message that you have for your colleagues in the space?
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend the initiative that actually came to fruition and was presented this week at the Vertical Farming Congress in Brussels. The Vertical Farming Manifesto that was signed and adopted by I think 23 of our peers, including Kalera. That's a great initiative, and it's an example that the industry can come together. So I think sometimes we're a bit too competitive against each other. but there is, we can cooperate in some aspects. But yeah, I mean, I would. My message is that we need to focus on the important things and make sure that we make this industry, very attractive. I think we're turning the corner from being an industry under development, where we get to the point where the industry has to prove its unit economics and its profitability projections. We know that our priority is good. We know that we're growing the product in a way that in many aspects it's more sustainable. We are addressing some real issues in the food chain. We really need to focus on the economics.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up. I'm really inspired by your story. It's been interesting to see, what the advice your father gave you is something you ended up taking. It took the long way, and it probably didn't end up as he or you thought. But I think it's exciting to see how that played out.
It was nice talking to you, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, we'll make sure. So it's Kalera.com for folks to learn more about the company, all the initiatives. I know you guys put out a lot of updates, a lot of press releases on everything that's happening. So we'll make sure we link to that as well. And I want to appreciate you again for taking the time to share your story. It's really inspiring to the listeners of the show to hear the origin stories for folks. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.